Hello and a warm welcome to the AI with Arun Show. Before we dive into data and economics, I want to start with a story. Imagine it's a Monday morning. Sarah is a mid-level analyst at a Fortune 500 company. She has been doing her job well for 6 years. But today, she logs in and there is almost nothing for her to do because an AI agent quietly worked through the night and handled most of her weekly tasks. She's not fired. She still has a job title, but her role has fundamentally changed overnight, and she's not alone. This story is playing out across millions of workplaces right now. And today, in this video, we are going to explore what it means for you, the society, and for the future of work itself. Let's begin. So we'll start with the big picture. What the data actually says about how many jobs is AI affecting. Then we'll get specific. Which types of jobs are most at risk? Which are surprisingly safe? And why? We'll also look at a surprising trend. AI is actually creating a massive construction and trades boom. We'll explore how companies are reorganizing their workplaces around AI. We'll reveal brand new, high paying job titles that barely existed just 2 years ago. And we won't shy away from the difficult stuff, the mental health toll this is taking on people, and the political battle over who gets to benefit from all this AI wealth. By the end of this video, you will have a clear picture of what is happening and what can you do about it. But before we understand what is happening to individual workers and industries, we need to grasp the sheer scale of this transformation. The numbers are staggering, and they reveal something that most headlines wrong about AI and jobs. Approximately 40% of all the jobs globally are exposed to AI in some capacity. In wealthy countries like the United States, the UK, and Germany, that number jumps to 60%. Goldman Sachs estimates that 300 million jobs worldwide are at risk of some automation. Here's a stat that really puts it in context. AI could automate up to 25% of all work hours in the United States. That is not 25% of jobs disappearing. It's a quarter of the hours worked across all jobs that could theoretically be done by a machine. But here's the good news. The World Economic Forum is projecting. While 92 million jobs will be displaced, 170 million new ones will be created for a net gain of 78 million jobs globally by 2030. Now, here is a popular fear that AI will simply take all the jobs and humans will have nothing left to do. This fear is based on a fallacy, the lump of labor fallacy. The idea behind this fallacy is that there is a fixed amount of work in the world, like a fixed pie. If a machine takes a slice, a human loses that slice forever. But history consistently proves this wrong. Technology does not just replace tasks, it creates entirely new industries and problems to solve. Here's a real world example. When ATMs were introduced in the 1970s, everybody thought that bank tellers would disappear. But the opposite happened. ATMs made it cheaper to run a branch, so banks opened more branches and actually hired more tellers. But now, those tellers focused on relationship building and complex customer service, not just handing out cash. AI works the same exact way. It lowers the cost of analysis, of writing and coding, which means companies can do more, create more products, serve more customers, and yes, hire more people for new, higher value roles. So, how fast is all this happening? This is important because the speed of change determines how painful or manageable the transition will be. Right now, roughly 6 to 7% of the workforce is experiencing what economists call structural displacement, meaning their job role has fundamentally changed or disappeared due to AI, not just temporarily. By 2030, the World Economic Forum projects that the labor force participation rate, meaning the share of adults who have jobs, will drop from about 62.6% today around 61%. That might sound really small, but it represents millions of people. By 2035, most companies will have fully integrated AI agents into their workflows. New human roles would have emerged, and the workplace will look very different from today. And by 2050, labor force participation will be as low as 55%, which raises the profound question: if fewer people are working, how does society define meaning, income, and purpose? And that's a question we'll explore later. For now, let's look at what specific jobs are most at risk. Because not all jobs are equally at risk, And the results are genuinely surprising. You might assume low paid manual jobs are most at risk, but the data tells a very different story. Let's find out. Researchers mapped out AI exposure across 143 million US jobs and scored each occupational category from 0 to 10. The highest exposure score, high income roles above $100,000 a year, like software developers, paralegals, and medical transcriptionists, scoring 6.7 out of 10. Why? Because AI is now extremely good at complex cognitive work, writing legal briefs, analyzing medical records, writing code. These are exactly the tasks that AI excels at. Middle income admin roles score 4.9. These are actually seeing some of the steepest real world job cuts right now. Customer service reps, office administrators, data entry clerks. And at the bottom, low income physical service workers score just 3.4. And truly physical roles such as roofers and janitors score around 1 to 2 because AI still cannot climb a ladder, navigate a slippery floor, or physically care for an elderly person. The big takeaway is that AI is disrupting the middle and the top of the income ladder first, not the bottom. This is the opposite of what most previous automation waves did. On the high risk side, you have roles that are essentially information processing. Bookkeepers, data entry clerks, paralegals doing routine research, insurance underwriters, customer service agents. These roles involve taking in structured information and producing a structured output. That is exactly what AI is now extraordinarily good at. On the safer side, you have jobs that require you to physically show up, emotionally connect, or navigate unpredictable real world environments. The plumber has to crawl under a house and figure out why a pipe is leaking. A therapist needs to read a patient's body language and build trust over months. A nurse has to make a split second judgment calls between imperfect information in a chaotic emergency room. The pattern is clear. If your job involves sitting at a computer, processing information, you should be paying very close attention right now. If your job involves showing up physically and interacting with messy, unpredictable reality, you are in a much stronger position. But here is the nuance. Even safe jobs will change. They'll still need AI fluency to thrive. Now, here is something most people don't know. AI is not just a threat to jobs. It's also creating a massive wave of physical hands-on jobs in a completely unexpected area. Let me explain the infrastructure paradox. Now, this is one of the most interesting stories in economics right now. Every single AI response you get, every chatbot answer, every automated email, every AI generated image runs on physical hardware. Data centers full of thousands of servers. Those servers need enormous amounts of electricity. They generate so much heat. They need industrial scale cooling systems. They need fiber optic cables laid in the ground. They need security systems and maintenance staff. And right now, there simply are not enough skilled tradespeople to build all of this infrastructure fast enough. In the US alone, experts estimate that 500,000 net new jobs need to be filled by 2030 just to meet the energy and the utility demands of the AI boom. Since 2022, 216,000 construction and maintenance jobs have already been created just from data center development. So while AI is replacing data entry clerks and legal researchers, it is simultaneously creating a massive demand for HVAC technicians, high voltage electricians, network engineers, and specialized cooling system experts. The digital future is being built by the very physical, very human hands. How are businesses actually changing the way they organize work? The Boston Consulting Group, BCG, study identified 5 distinct ways AI is reshaping jobs. And understanding these will help you figure out where your own role might be heading. So, BCG studied companies around the world and identified 5 distinct patterns in how AI is reshaping jobs. Let me walk you through each one of them. So, first, amplified roles. Now, these are people who keep their job title but face dramatically higher expectations. A marketing manager who used to produce 2 campaigns a month now has AI tools and is expected to produce 20. Same role, exponentially higher output. This can be exciting or exhausting. The second one is rebalanced roles. Here, the boring part of a job gets automated. A financial analyst who spends 60% of the time pulling together data now has AI to do that instantly, freeing them to spend 60% of the time on actual analysis and strategy. This is the promise of AI as a great assistant. The third is divergent roles. Now, this is a sneaky one. When AI handles all the junior tasks like first drafts, basic research, routine coding, there is no longer a clear path for younger people to learn the ropes. The traditional pay your dues as a junior career track is breaking. The fourth is substituted roles. Now, these are jobs that are simply being replaced end to end by AI systems. Standard translation, routine bookkeeping, basic customer service scripts. The entire workflow is now automated. And finally, the fifth, enabled roles. AI is woven quietly into the background. Customer service agents with AI suggesting responses, HR teams using AI to screen resumes. The human is still there, but AI is a constant co-pilot. As AI takes over more tasks, the human role in the workplace shifts from doing to orchestrating. Let me show you what that looks like in practice. The new work cycle has four stages. First, a real business problem or exception arises. Something needs to be done. Second, the human frames the problem, sets the goals, the constraints, the rules, the limits. Think of this like writing a detailed brief. AI agents execute. They analyze data. They draft content. They make calculations. They take actions at scale. And fourth, a human checks the work, validates it against real world context, makes the final call, and feeds learning back into the system. Two new roles are emerging to own these responsibilities. The AI work architect designs the workflow. It translates a complex business situation into structured instructions, and AI can safely follow. It's not about coding, it's about systems thinking and deep domain knowledge. The AI steward sits at the end of the pipeline. They review what AI produced and exercise human judgment, catching the mistake that AI can't see, like cultural nuances or safety concerns, relationship dynamics. They are the human guardrail. In 2026, approximately 40% of global 2000 companies have workers doing these jobs daily, and that number is growing fast. Now, here is a fascinating economic trend developing right alongside automation. As AI makes synthetic content infinite and free, authentic human work is becoming increasingly scarce and valuable. Think about the organic food movement. Organic produce costs 2 to 3 times more than conventional food, but because it is dramatically better nutritionally in every case, but because it represents something real, natural, and authentic. People are willing to pay a premium for that signal. The same dynamic is now emerging with human made creative work, artisan goods, face to face services, and verified human expertise. When AI can produce 1,000 blog posts a day, a thoughtful article written by a genuine expert becomes the premium product. Researchers call this the emergence of a certified human tier of consumption. And there is a warning on the flip side. Companies that are aggressively automating their content and communications without adequate human oversight are experiencing what sociologists call flopification, a degradation of quality and authenticity that erodes customer trust. The data shows that companies prioritizing human to AI collaboration rather than pure automation are projected to enjoy 15% higher profit margins by 2029 compared to those just chasing cost reduction. The lesson: AI is a powerful tool, but human judgment is still the differentiator. All right, let's now talk money and opportunity. Because while many jobs are being disrupted, a whole new category of extremely well-paying roles is emerging. These jobs barely existed 3 years ago. Let me show you what they are, what they pay, and what it takes to get those jobs. At the very top, research engineers at frontier AI labs like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google DeepMind. These roles between $350,000 and $1.4 million a year in total compensation. These are the people actually building the next generation of AI models. They typically require a PhD in computer science, machine learning, or mathematics. AI infrastructure engineers manage the massive physical computing systems that run these models, the GPU clusters, the distributed servers, the serving infrastructure. They earn roughly $220,000 to $600,000 plus. Then there are LLM engineers who specialize in taking existing large language models and customizing them for specific industries, let's say law or medicine or finance. They earn $210,000 to $450,000. Then there are forward deployed engineers. They are a fascinating hybrid role. They literally embed with enterprise clients on site and build custom AI solutions in real time. They need strong engineering skills and consulting experience, and they're earning anywhere from $238,000 to $700,000. And AI software engineers, the most accessible entry point, build product features using AI APIs and evaluation systems. These roles start at $159,000. So here is the opportunity. 90% of global enterprises report critical skill gaps in AI right now. The demand massively outstrips the supply. Now, here's the really exciting part for people who don't have a computer science degree. A whole category of high value AI roles does not require coding at all. It requires domain expertise, strategic thinking, and an understanding of how AI works, not the ability to build it. The AI agent architect does not code AI, they design the workflow logic. How should the system be structured? What decisions can the AI make alone? Where must a human be involved? The AI FinOps specialist focuses on cost management. AI systems can accidentally run expensive loops and cost companies hundreds of thousands of dollars. This role optimizes spending. AI red teamers are professional attackers. They intentionally try to break AI systems by feeding them adversarial inputs, testing for data leaks, and finding ways to manipulate AI behavior. Now, this is essentially an ethical hacker for AI. Domain AI trainers are fascinating. These are doctors, lawyers, and financial experts who provide structured feedback, who teach AI systems how to behave correctly in their field. A radiologist who reviews AI medical image interpretations and marks what is right and wrong. That is a domain AI trainer. And AEO strategists that stand for Answer Engine Optimization. As people increasingly ask questions to a ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, instead of the traditional Google search, companies need experts who make sure they understand how AI answers mention their brand. That is the new SEO, the search engine optimization. Here is a crisis that's not getting enough attention. What happens to people just starting their careers? Right now, 66% of companies are reducing entry level hiring because AI can do what junior employees used to do. Think about that for a minute. What does it mean for a 22-year-old graduating today? The entire traditional model of career development was built on doing junior work. You start by reading contracts, writing the first draft, running the numbers, debugging the code. You make mistakes, your manager corrects you, and over the years, you build judgment to do senior work. Now, AI does most of the junior work better and faster. So, if you are never doing the junior work, how do you ever build senior judgment? This is what researchers call the judgment development paradox. And it is a real structural problem. In 5 to 10 years, companies may find themselves with a generation of workers who have impressive AI tools but shallow judgment because they never earned their reps. The solution is deliberate. Companies need to design programs where young workers are specifically tasked with auditing, stress testing, and improving AI outputs. That is the new junior experience. If you are young and watching this, look for opportunities to do exactly this kind of AI adjacent. This is your on ramp. Now I want to shift gears to something that might be the most important part of this entire video, and it has nothing to do with economics or technology. This is about the human soul. What happens to our sense of purpose, our identity, and meaning when AI does most of the work? When you meet someone new at a party, what is usually the second or the third thing that you ask them? What do? We ask people about the job almost immediately. We define people by their work. This is what sociologists call workism, the cultural belief that paid employment is the central source of your identity, your moral worth, and your purpose in life. But here is the historical perspective. This is actually a pretty recent invention. Ancient Greek philosophers considered leisure and contemplation the highest human calling. Labor was what slaves did. The idea that you should be proud of being overworked or that your job defines your worth, that is largely an industrial era creation that got baked into Western culture. The 40-hour work week was not handed down from nature. Henry Ford invented it in 1914. Before that, people worked 60 to 80 hours a week. Before industrialization, most people structured their time around seasons, community, and faith, not employment. So, now, as AI begins to absorb more and more of the cognitive work, the defined professional identity, the fundamental question is this: if you are no longer a lawyer or a writer or an analyst in the same way, who are you? This is not just a philosophical question, it has real psychological consequences. The psychological data on this is sobering. A landmark 2024 Harvard study found that 58% of young adults reported having little or no sense of purpose or meaning in their lives. More than half of those surveyed said that their mental health struggles stemmed from simply not knowing what to do with their lives. And researchers found this purposelessness correlates directly with rising clinical rates of anxiety and depression. Now, it's important to note this is not all caused by AI, but AI is accelerating the underlying dynamic. When work disappears or changes radically, people often lose something more than income. They lose structure, they lose the social connections that come from colleagues, they lose a sense of contribution and progress. Psychologists have identified four core needs that work traditionally satisfies. One is autonomy, the sense you control your life. Two, mastery, the satisfaction of being better at something. Three, connection, belonging to a community. And four, self actualization, becoming who you are capable of being. The research is clear. If we want the post work transition to lead to human flourishing rather than widespread depression and purposelessness, societies need to deliberately build the institutions and frameworks to meet these four needs outside of traditional employment. This is not optional, it's a public health imperative. Sociologists have mapped out two very different visions of how society might organize itself as work changes. In the industrial era, we all grew up in your core values comes from your market productivity. Your identity is your job title. Basic needs are defined as food, housing, and physical safety. Status is signaled by being visibly busy. Being overworked became a badge of honor. Your most important institution is your employer. In the speculative post world era, value comes from creativity, from relationships, and self directed contribution. Identity is built around passion projects and community impact. Basic needs are redefined to include autonomy, psychological health, and self actualization, meaning society is responsible for providing more than just physical survival. Status comes from having discretionary time and creative mastery, not from being busy. Your most important institution is the local community, not your employer. Now, this is a profound cultural shift, and it does not happen automatically or painlessly. It requires deliberately redesigning our social institutions, our schools, our healthcare systems, our welfare programs around a fundamentally different understanding of what it means to live a good life. What would a society look like when you are valued for your community contributions rather than your salary? That is the question the post war era is forcing us to answer. So, as AI generates enormous wealth for a relatively small group of companies and shareholders, governments around the world are debating how do we make sure regular people benefit too? Let's look at what's happening actually in Washington right now. On June 18th, 2026, Senator Bernie Sanders introduced one of the most ambitious pieces of economic legislation in decades. The American AI Sovereign Wealth Fund Act proposes to create a public fund estimated at $7 trillion. Here's how it works. Pillar 1: any large company making more than $200 million a year from AI pays a 50% tax on that AI revenue, but not in cash. They put it in a company stock. Those shares go into public fund owned on behalf of all Americans. Pillar 2: the seven-member bipartisan commission manages this fund. They can vote to block corporate decisions that harm the public interest, like decisions to fire large number of workers or engage in monopolistic practices. The fund also distributes a dividend of about $1,000 per year to every US resident. Pillar 3: companies must legally separate their AI business from the non AI business so the public gets equity specifically in the high growth, valuable AI portion. Here's what is wild: this is not just a left wing idea. OpenAI supports a version of it. Sam Altman has held discussions about voluntary equity seeding models J.D. Vance has signaled support as form of redistribution. Even Steve Bannon has called for forcing AI companies to give 50% of their equity to the public. This is genuinely bipartisan territory. Now, even supporters of the Sanders bill acknowledge a serious structural problem. The conflict of interest that arises when the government simultaneously owns and regulates AI companies. Here is the scenario. The government has a $7 trillion fund invested in the stocks of major AI companies. This fund pays every American about $1,000 a year in dividends. Then the FDA wants to restrict a medical AI system that's making dangerous errors. Now the FTC wants to break up an AI company for antitrust violations. Either actions would reduce the stock price of those AI companies and directly reduce the public's dividend payout. So regulators suddenly have a financial incentive not to enforce safety rules. That is a profound conflict of interest. It could completely paralyze oversight of the most powerful technology in human history. Public experts say the solution is to legally separate the governance of the fund from the regulatory agencies entirely. Put the shares in a truly independent, non governmental trust, just like how sovereign wealth funds work in Norway. This is a live debate, enormous consequences, and it is worth noting. Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, has notably not joined the voluntary equity sharing discussions, while other AI labs have. Where you draw the line on government private AI ownership is one of the most defining political questions of our time. Outside the sovereign wealth fund debate, there are two main philosophies for how to support people economically as AI changes the nature of work. The first is universal basic income or UBI. The idea is simple. Every citizen receives a direct, unconditional cash payment, no strings attached. You're unemployed? Here is the money. You're a millionaire? Here is the money. It's universal. Supporters love it because it maximizes individual choice, removes the stigma of welfare, and is administratively simple. But there is a serious catch. In a market economy with constrained supply, like housing, handling everyone extra cash does not necessarily improve living standards. It can just become a subsidy for landlords to raise rent. If everyone has an extra $1,000 a month, but housing supply does not increase, landlords simply capture that money through higher rents. The people you are trying to help end up no better off. The second model is Universal Basic Services or UBS. Instead of giving people cash to buy necessities in the market, you simply take those necessities out of the market entirely. Healthcare is free, childcare is free, public transit is free, education is free, social housing is guaranteed. Now, a much smaller income is required for a dignified life because your biggest expenses are already covered. Most economists now recommend a hybrid, a modest cash flow, enough for personal choices, combined with robust universal basic services to cover the fundamentals. That combination is the most inflation resistant and most equitable approach. Now let's make this practical. What should you actually do? Let me give you a concrete framework for navigating this. Here's your practical takeaway. 4 steps in order of priority. Step 1. Audit your own role honestly. Sit down and make a list of everything you do in a typical week. Then sort those tasks, which involve processing information and producing structured outputs, and which involves physical presence, unpredictable human situations, or complex relationship dynamics. The first category is where AI will eat into your role. The second is where you're most irreplaceable. Know your ratio. Step 2. Build AI fluency, not coding skills necessarily, but orchestration skills, understanding what the tools can and cannot do. Learn to direct them effectively. Learn to spot when they are wrong. Practice making AI assisted outputs 20% better with your judgment. This skill is the new version of knowing what to use or how to use Excel. It's a baseline professional literacy. And step 3, double down on what AI fundamentally cannot do: emotional intelligence, physical presence, ethical judgment in messy situations, the ability to build trust over time with another human being, deep domain expertise that is hard to articulate. These are your certified human advantages. Then, step 4, and this is the deepest one. Start working on separating your sense of self worth from your job titles. Build communities, develop creative practices, find sources of meaning in things outside of your career. This is not just a good philosophy, It's a practical, psychological insurance for a future where the nature of work continues to change unpredictably. Beyond individual actions, there are institutional changes that research says are necessary for this transition to go well. First, companies need to rebuild entry level career tracks deliberately. The research is clear that fully automating all junior tasks creates a missing generation of professionals. Companies that want to have a senior talent in 10 years need to invest in junior AI evaluation programs today, where young workers are paid specifically to check, improve, and learn from AI outputs. Second, if sovereign wealth fund models are adopted, the governance structure has to be very carefully, thoughtfully designed to prevent the conflict of interest that we talked about earlier. The shares must be held in a truly independent trust that is legally firewalled from regulatory agencies that oversee the same set of companies. And third, the welfare state needs a fundamental redesign, moving from a means tested income replacement, where you have to prove you're poor to get help, towards a universal model where healthcare, education, transit, and housing are guaranteed to everyone, regardless of employment status. That redesign is the most powerful way to ensure that the massive productivity gains from AI translate into broad human well being rather than concentrated wealth. Now, these are not radical proposals, they are the mainstream research consensus from institutions like the IMF, the World Economic Forum, and leading economists from around the world. Let's close with where we started, with Sarah. 6 months after that disorienting Monday morning, where she logged in to find that her AI had handled everything, Sarah did not lose her job. She was actually promoted. Not because she fought the AI or pretended that it wasn't happening, but because she leaned into it. She took the time to deeply understand the tools. She noticed the patterns in when the AI made mistakes. She rebuilt her team's workflow from the ground up around human AI collaboration. She became the person in the organization who could translate between the messy complexity of real business problems and the structured world that AI agents can actually navigate. Her new title, AI World Architect. A new salary, 40% higher than before. Sarah's story is not unique. It's happening at companies right now all over the world. The people who are thriving in this transition are not the ones who pretend that AI is not coming. They are the ones who run towards it with curiosity, learn what it can and cannot do, and position themselves as the essential humans in an AI augmented. That is the opportunity sitting in front of all of us right now. The transition is real. The disruption is real.